Hi, I'm Ikea, and for today's video, I want to have an in-depth look into Turmoil and Handbasket, as both have been recently added, of course, and Handbasket actually been out for less than 2 days at this point. And they are both actually very interesting, and I've also seen a lot of bad information around them. So I kind of want to set the record straight, talk about their good sides and their bad sides, as that is actually one of the things I've been taking umbrage with, as some people are just highlighting downsides and going, it sucks, or just highlighting the good sides and going, it's the best thing ever. The truth is kind of in the middle in this one. It isn't always, but in this one, definitely, there is a thing to be said for highlighting both the good sides and the bad sides and actually discussing it fairly. So I'm hoping to do that today. We'll start off with the Turmoil and then go to the Handbasket. And everything will be timestamped down below. And of course, we'll be using several spreadsheets and such, and those will be linked down below as well. And let's get started by talking about the Turmoil. The Turmoil was added, of course, to everybody's mailboxes at the start of April Fool's, basically. It is no longer available to be gotten. So if you missed out on that day, you're kind of in the same way of the Lexington, kind of, out to dry, and hopefully they will address items like this and the Lexington and give us more ways to get them. Maybe just once even. I don't know, just put them as your first legendary clear or something and then you get it. Still keeping it maybe, you have to do something to attain it, but not completely unattainable, as unobtainium is just kind of sucks, as we already know with the Lexington, especially when it's good items, of course, because we also have plenty of things that aren't that great. The Turmoil, it was a one-time gift. The Handbasket instead is actually one of the special items, so it'll drop from the hoarder, the loot goblin. You can actually farm it from him once you have one. Turmoil, as we have it here, is a Cheska knee pad, named knee pad, and has a Cheska brand bonuses, of course. It comes weapon damage, crit chance, crit damage, fully guard rolled as well, starting out, which can definitely as well for newer players be a boon, because you don't need to optimize anything on this or do anything to it. It's kind of just perfect. If you were to want to recalibrate it, I would only say really maybe just the core, so you can have maybe a blue core if you really wanted to. Although the interaction with Headhunter should also not be ignored, although I would kind of feel bad putting putting that on here. And then we have its talent, which is Bewildered, and what it is when dealing weapon damage to an enemy, 50% of the damage will be dealt to another enemy within 30 meters instead. When there are no enemies nearby, deal damage normally does not apply to armor plates. Let's break that down basically. Whenever we deal weapon damage, so only weapon damage, not skills, not also, for instance, some of the talents like Negotiator or such are basically in the background. Their skills, Pesty Ticks, for instance, as well as a debuff. None of those things are weapon damage. So it is just the weapon damage, and of course as well, no turret, no drones, no oxy, none of those things. Those are skills. 50% of the damage will be dealt to another enemy within 30 meters instead. So the damage basically gets split up, and half of it goes to the enemy you're targeting or hitting, and half of it randomly goes to an enemy within 30 meters, which is of course a 60-meter circle. That is actually really big as well. That isn't a small area to cover, so it is actually jumping around quite a bit, and even in some of the bigger rooms in the game, in missions and such, it will actually still head out. When there are no enemies nearby, deal damage normally. This actually isn't true, because even when is only one enemy available to be hit, as long as they're not armor plated, of course, because as the last sentence says, does not apply to armor plates. Whenever you shoot an armor plate, it basically does normal damage. It doesn't spread around. If you even target one enemy, let's say we have the Hunters in Countdown as the initial fight, for instance. There's only one enemy within that range. When you hit them, actually the damage still splits, and both of those ends just end up hitting the same enemy. That does become actually important when we kind of go and actually in-depth look into this, because this is, of course, what the talent says it does. What the talent actually does is, well, first of all, as we stuck there, it always splits, even if it is one singular enemy, as long as they're not armor plated. But what it has as well as a trait is that it double dips on several stats and talents. Now, I'll be highlighting actually here, especially what has become my preference with it. Although you could, of course, go with Headhunter with this, as we'll discuss in a little bit, which is the other way to kind of go with it. But in a red style, going glass, which will double dip, and having a weapon with detox, which, you know, in most cases, we will have that anyway. Although we could go with an LMG, of course, which has 2 more. But here I'm kind of gone with the Lexington, as that's the weapon that I've used in the spreadsheet to discuss this. And for that, of course, yeah, we have prepared this spreadsheet. These are multi-calculators of my design. Input happens down here. Output gets output up here. And especially we're kind of looking at a burst and a sustained DPS. And in here, we can compare builds against each other. This specific one will be linked down below as well, so you can go around and play around with it if you need to. What we have here is, first off, from the recent Striker Talents video, I've taken the Sacrifice, but then with the Coyote and the Striker Backpack, and also the Sacrifice plus the Gift version. As we kind of saw there, the Sacrifice plus Gift version can actually be pretty good, especially when you do have Vigilance up. And then when you lose Vigilance, it's pretty bad, which was kind of the gist of that video. So both of these are kind of pretty good setups to have. In this case, of course, if we're going with the Turmoil and we want to have the Sacrifice chest, which we kind of want to, as we were kind of talking about, there is some weirdness going on with double dipping. So basically, the Turmoil version that I want to go with is with the Sacrifice chest, and then the Turmoil kind of forcing us into that backpack, of course. And that is this one. And then here in its original version, if it was working as was talked about there, basically, because of course, if we put it up against a Sacrifice plus a Cheska piece in effect, and then splitting the damage, although of course, if we're splitting the damage, we're still doing 50%. We're doing the same damage. It's just in practice, the damage is, of course, one of the damages is targeted, the other one is just jumping around and may not hit things that you're intending to even wanting to hit. It might waste itself on enemies that aren't really consequential at the time, or even things that would despawn once the fighting is over, like mini tanks and such. If it was just working as that, just splitting the damage and putting both sides on it, on burst versus the Coyote, especially because we would go from basically Sacrifice plus Coyote to Sacrifice plus Cheska. The Cheska piece is going to be less in both, because here on top as well, we have the Sacrifice plus the Coyote version. We have it both on 15 to 25 and 0 to 15. It's even less than the 0 to 15 one, which is in the wrong range, so to say. Especially against that Gift Sacrifice version, yeah, it's quite a bit behind, more than 10% behind that. But, as we were kind of talking about, it doesn't work like that. It's double dipping on certain things. Now, the major ones is especially detox. It does not do it with DTH or DTA, which I've seen a lot of people claim, but simple testing shows it doesn't. It is only, of those stats, it is only damage to targets out of cover. And I'm guessing this is just, they are aware of the Negotiator double dipping, because the Negotiator double dips on DTA specifically. But because of that, they likely implemented or checked against that, but detox got through. The other thing is that glass double dips. And here we have, of course, perfect glass. So actually what we're hitting for is this combination. So here I've basically made two rows for this. And in the top row is the main hit, and then the split that double dips. So in that split that double dips, we're adding another 10. Here I'm adding it in the total weapon damage field. The field doesn't matter. It just needs to be a separate multiplier, so it needs to be in its own field. So we have that 10, and then we have 2 glasses on that second half. Now, with both of these, I'm just splitting the base in half. That's how we're halving it. Basically, at any point, we could just put a divide by 2. I'm doing it at the base here, just so it's visually easy to spot as well for others. Then this third one that we have here, this is the combination of this average damage and this average damage, because both are happening at the same time, plus summing them together into this one. So this third one doesn't actually even, isn't calculated from stats. It's basically those two combined together. What we see is actually when we split them out, that first one, especially here in the inters, so this gray inters is between these two only. The main hit is, of course, just 100%. That second hit is 43%. And that's because the multiplicative nature of these two stats happening. We're doing times 1.3 times 1.1. That isn't, as we kind of discussed with simple maths and stuff, you don't add those together. You don't go 1.3 plus 1.1. They're multipliers against each other, so they're multiplying against each other. So that 1.1 and that 1.3 become a 1.43 together instead of a 1.4 if you were to add them together, which you shouldn't. With that, we're getting, so the split shot is basically doing 40, if we have glass and we have 10% detalk, with an AR in this case, then we are gaining 43% on that split part of it. Now, if we compare the two gray ones, which is basically the turmoil as, you know, as red, as the talent kind of says it works. Although as well, if we don't have detalk, if we don't have glass, it does work like this. It needs to have certain talents and certain amps kind of apply to this. But specifically here with detalk and with glass, what it actually is this last number of that combination. And if we compare those two together, it's basically half of this 43% because it's getting smeared over both basically. So a 21.5% increase overall. Now, this is of course just a theoretical increase. Again, we're just shooting a target. The split is especially getting that 43% extra. We have no control over where that split goes. But that's not only a downside, because that split will also hit things that you can't see. And that is actually a major advantage. And then we have a major disadvantage in that the target that we're directly shooting at, we're doing half damage against. And we're also doing basically of the DPS of the build, we're doing actually less than half of it because that split damage is actually doing a lot more of the heavy lifting. That does mean that, yeah, when you're just, a rusher is coming towards you, you might actually get hit, where if you were just single targeting them with just, you know, without the turmoil, you would maybe kill them. But let's actually go see this in practice and kind of discuss it further. And for that, we've come to the vault to kind of showcase it here. As here, of course, there's always enemies on the roof, and they got me last time that I was here. Assaulting from that side. We'll be a little bit smarter this time. And then the thing here especially is that I don't need to go to the roof. Unlike Negotiator, where we actually need to mark the other enemies, here we don't. It just jumps around. What it actually does in gameplay as well is every shot just goes randomly splits to a different target. What that also means is that, especially for things like RC cars and stuff, if they get one put down, it will actually, one of the shots might go to that and just blow it up. But here, not having to go upstairs is by itself already a pretty good deal. As well, with this shield guy, for instance, I can damage him behind it in the same way that a Negotiator can. Shooting the shield will not transfer damage. It is considered an armor plate. That's actually how the shields are kind of programmed in this game. And once we have them named out here, I'm just gonna focus the names. The named, of course, has so much more health and armor than everything else. Not much survived there except 2 enemies with Frenzy. Now, with Frenzy especially, there is actually a little bit of a waste happening because, yeah, we do want to focus those guys down and get them down as quickly as possible. So with this season's modifier, maybe not the best fit, because we would want to, it would be better to not have 2 enemies regen 1 time more, basically, because you're not killing them fast enough. Instead of that, you could just murder 1 enemy and then go to the other. But here as well, just having to, I shot at 2 enemies, there were 4 enemies in total. I shot at 2 and killed the other 2. Not having to reacquire a target, that has big value. But then the downside, of course, is that the single target is a lot worse. And moving on to, for instance, here, where we have a heavy with this. Now, when we shoot a heavy, it's just going to do the normal damage up until we break its chest, and then it's going to start spreading the damage around. Here as well, we have some from some frenzied enemies. We will actually take longer to kill them, than if we didn't have that. I'm also gonna get downed here from that fire. So, talking and not paying all the attention. This also influences a little bit, for instance here, my choice of talent. So instead of going with, for instance, killer, the spread kills. If the spread is the thing that kills, that doesn't trigger killer. So what that means is that, for instance, in this case, I'm going with measured instead, because even though there would be still a really high likelihood of triggering that initial killer, also killer would trigger after the first kill. I would prefer to have a little bit more damage up front, just to have, as we're also running striker, which also lacks a little bit of damage up front. But the benefits of that, of just shooting some of the enemies and not having to shoot all of the enemies, is worth it. But we saw there as well on that very first enemy, for instance, it took me quite a bit to take them down. Because they had frenzy, we were doing half damage against them. The damage was kind of getting wasted as well, actually, on other enemies with frenzy. But of course, then without frenzy, that issue isn't there. So actually, with frenzy, there's definitely a case to be made against it. But numbers-wise as well, we're basically getting 20% off of this singular talent. Which, of course, if, you know, this talent is getting us 30%, and this one by itself on a knee pad slot, especially as well where we don't have that many options, is getting us 20% in combination, of course, with other things. That makes for a pretty decent deal. And for one more example, in this case, actually as well, with an LMG, as we were talking about, DTOC, of course, actually is one of the stats that does double dip. So here we have 12 instead of 10 on there. And yeah, that does help out a little bit. It isn't per se like worthwhile to just go LMGs for that. The accuracy of ARs is kind of nice. Here I've sneaked around the back. If you don't know how to do that, you just come up the ramparts there and just, you can jump that fence and get behind basically. And of course, they will spawn just from upstairs in the back here. There's a bunch of enemies again. Outside, we're actually not going to concern ourselves with them. I'm going to get up here, pulse. We have modifiers on again here. And I'm just going to focus on these enemies upstairs. And as we can see, the time to kill on singular enemies up here, definitely a lot slower. And that does feel bad. But on the other hand, all of those enemies downstairs, with the exception of one, I think there, and we're going to see in a second, likely they have frenzy. But especially once the named as well has spawned here, yeah, we can. And actually some of our damage even went out there, I think. Oh no, that was our pulse. So this enemy was likely too far away. Oh, they've made their way upstairs. As we get downstairs. I'm gonna guess, oh no, they don't even have frenzy. But yeah, they were likely a little bit too far away. It is, of course, from where the enemy is and not where we are, where the damage spreads from. And yeah, stuff like that makes it quite easy to just quickly empty out a control point, because I didn't have to go and kill several people outside there. They all died to that spread. Same here again, we're just gonna focus one or two enemies. Now again, the frenzy not working in our favor. And especially as well, yeah, when we are getting frenzied enemies, we are wasting a little bit. That much I can definitely agree with. Trying to see where the other one went, but I think we didn't even see them. And of course, once the named spawns, and actually what I do want to do is be a little bit closer. We're more in hot shot range than we are in glass striker range.
Civilians in distress.
Well, they damaged themselves as well. So this enemy though was kind of out of that range. And then once we have it down to one enemy, when that split happens, we are just doing 20% more to them. There's no other enemy nearby enough, I think. So both of the damages are going here, and we're killing them 20% faster, which by itself is also a decent deal. So we do lose a little bit of damage, and especially as well, the thing is, with Striker, our weakest point is kind of when we're starting out. So running this, for instance, as well with a glass red can make a little bit of sense. So you're a little bit higher up front, of course. With it being the knee pad slot, yeah, you don't want to, for instance, go with a vigilance backpack and then the striker chest. That doesn't make sense. If you're going striker chest, you kind of need the striker backpack. That kind of excludes, of course, this. But in a high end, that would make a lot of sense. And I wonder as well if they actually do know about the detox double dipping beforehand, and that's why they picked the knee pad slot, because of course we can't have a Fox's Spur and this together. Yeah, let's go actually have one look at it on sharpshooting setup, and then we'll go on to the handbasket. And next up, we'll take it into a little bit of the realm of sniping. Here though, I'm just using 3-piece hotshot. Not my preferred way. I do actually prefer the 4-piece hotshot setup. Jane Giller Araldi, not even the double Habsburgs here, and then with the Turmoil. The thing with Turmoil is that the Headhunter part of the equation actually does not care that it's getting split. It will apply full amounts, even on that split, to both sides. And then the main shot that you're doing, the current shot basically, with the way that we usually describe that is getting split. So on the initial hit here, so for instance, if I actually, on this, for instance, this would be more than enough to drop a purple. Let's see actually if I can find the purple in here. Oh, it's in the back there. Okay, now to sheet, but I missed as well. Look at this guy. Or try to. You know what, let's get this recon drone out so we can actually see where. But if we kind of look at our damage here, so that was a 3.3. So because of that damage, initial damage getting split, we are losing our ability to, for instance, start on a purple. But that's of course not an issue if we have a nemesis in our bag, because we can although here with all of the fires is actually, I'm not doing myself any favors and making it actually a lot harder. Although actually even the nemesis there at full charge did not have enough to one-tap this one. But once we get going, so we have now a Headhunter stack saved up, right? So I'm swapped over to a different weapon that has Determined. And from this point onward, once we have Headhunter going, you can see that every time I actually take a shot, 2 damage numbers are happening. And yeah, we're hitting 2 enemies. This is extremely broken. This shouldn't have made it through QA. I am actually mad about this one. Not even disappointed, just mad. The thing with this as well is if we were to get an enemy with a helmet, the split damage will kill them just outright, because it's not acting like the determined shot and going to the helmet. Here as well, we had named. I would maybe not have enough to kill them outright, but several of the shots transferred to them and made it pretty easy to kind of get that going. Let's send one up. Here, of course, with the modifier as well, I have a little bit more damage once I'm in the higher tiers of it, which I am here because we got a ton of headshot kills there. And yeah, we can, although my Headhunter was still there, and we can just get those damages going. If there isn't an enemy in range, it'll just do double damage on that singular enemy, and yeah, if anything is left alive at the end, it is just gonna get murdered by that quite a bit. This also means that if you have a pre-stag and you have certain places where there's singular enemy, you can kind of do double damage. And of course, with Determined, guaranteeing the headshot, making it a headshot basically outright, this makes it a little bit too cheesy. The thing is, though, that, yeah, you do have to actually put some effort into that starting. But starting with a nemesis, starting with a tag 50 or such, that kind of solves that issue. And it's not too big of an issue to have starting out. I don't want to actually push all the way out there, but I fear I might have to. Because, of course, my reinforcements are... I would rather do this without them than with them. Here, though, we likely took longer than the 30 seconds that we had for Headhunter, because of this. And yeah, this fencing is always super annoying because a lot of the shots will just get eaten up there. That does mean that, for instance, on a frenzied enemy here, yeah, we're doing 3 million, so we would need multiple shots. But yeah, you just gotta get used to pulling out the Nemi and learning the wiggle patterns, which I definitely don't have. But even there, we actually killed that other guy just with that spread. You know what? I should just go attack 50, just so I don't have the charge up time and holding down the button. That definitely is a downside with the Nemesis. You have to hold the button down, which for me makes it actually harder to kind of re-get my my shot. There though, yeah, we didn't get the headshots, but that still killed that guy and heavily damaged something else in the vicinity. Although actually no, I think maybe both just went to that guy and outright killed him. And while the starting is a little bit more challenging, yeah, there's tricks around that. You could even actually get started and then swap. Once we have actually one charged, one saved basically in the headhunter, from that point onward, even elite can be dropped. This is definitely a step too far. I don't think it should be dibble dipping. That doesn't seem an intended thing because it's just too good. And it definitely should not be double applying headhunter. Let's go look at the other gift that we were given around these April Fool times, which is, or in this case, for Easter more so. Let's go look at the handbasket. And the handbasket, as it turns out, as we did see it in the expertise from the very start of when the Easter event started, of the gathering of the eggs, it was added to the expertise table. That's also quite often how we know new items and what they're going to be. So we already saw it in here at the start of this week, basically, or the start of last week, with it being an SVD. So we kind of had some expectations. Then some leaks kind of happened. Those leaks partially turned out to be true. As yeah, we do have a weapon that is 60 RPM. The base damage that got kind of leaked early wasn't actually the end number. So it turns out that in the end, it is 387,000 as we turn on show base damage, 387k. This turns out also to be the exact same number as the 1886, and I don't mean it just in here kind of being truncated to the same number. No, it's that number. As we've added it to the burst and sustain tables and such, and we back calculated out the base, and so it is at 60 RPM, 387. It is SVD, 15 rounds with the extended mag. We can have a scope on it and such, and this is of course an MMR. Now, directly versus the 1886, the 1886 is 100 RPM. This is 60 RPM. So in a burst kind of thinking, yeah, this is worse than it. But then we have two things that kind of make up for that. And that is that it can have a scope, which I very much prefer in my headhuntings. And secondarily, it is an MMR, another rifle. That comes with some benefits, like being able to run it on hotshot, and it comes with some downsides, of course, which is that it acquires targets much more slowly, as, for instance, rifles can snapshot much quicker if you run and then kind of stop and aim. A rifle will become accurate much more quickly than a marksman rifle, of course. So there's upsides and there's downsides. Now, if we actually look and go to the build pictures, so I've already added it into the build pictures of both this one, the Chainkiller Araldi version with hotshot, together with also the Habsburg one. We'll look at both. And just damage numbers wise, there's basically always one thing that I kind of want out of an MMR build, and that is that it can start on a purple, and this can. With a grade 25 on this, although with a grade 0 we can't specifically. We need, I haven't exactly calculated that, but at grade 20 definitely we could. At grade 25 we definitely can. We need kind of like 8.4-ish for, or 8.36, no, 6.36, sorry. 6.36 kind of for an purple enemy. We'll actually see that exact number in a second if I'm mistaken here. And we have more than that, meaning that we can drop a purple with this from standstill without the hotshot prepped. And that's kind of all I want from a rifle. Then though is, does it have any benefits over other things? And there is one big benefit, which we'll discuss in a second. But first, let's go to the Habsburg version. We'll pull that one up. On the Habsburg version, we kind of gain even a little bit more on it. And the cap on both of them is enough for a named, but actually not enough for an LMG named, which is kind of important because, for instance, SR1 does have enough for that. Both of those, of course, are much more comfortable than the White Death, which is kind of the damage king in this category. The White Death, yeah, definitely nothing comes close to it because it has one of the highest bases, and then together with that headshot kind of bonus, it doesn't come near to that. But the thing with this is, of course, it isn't bolt action. I've also added it in to the tables or the MMR tables as we made them a few seasons ago, where it can calculate out basically. We put in the numbers on the right and on the left side here. And I'll link to this one as well, of course, but it lives in the DPS tables. So I'll link both to those and to this one specifically. We've got it in the Handbasket, and here in this case with, this is Hotshot pre-stacked with the Chain Killer plus RLD, for instance. And even at, at this grade 25, it is the lowest on the list. It is even behind the Tactical Trio 8. But we were already using the Tactical Trio 8 because, again, that one had enough firepower on its first shot and on its cap shot. And the Tactical Trio 8 has, for instance, the options to have extra even towards accuracy and stability. And then as well, it actually, unlike the White Death, which kind of jumps around when you fire, it scopes out. When it scopes back in, it doesn't go to the exact same spot with the White Death. With the Tactical Trio 8, with the SR1, it is pretty close. With the even some of the custom M44 and M700 and the SRSs, it's also pretty close. So there's benefit to, we use those other weapons kind of for comfort. Could this be the most comfortable weapon? I'm going to actually posit yes, especially if you're using a scope. Now, damage numbers wise, even without Hotshot pre-stacked, which is the second list, we have enough firepower on that first shot. As we kind of see up here, we need how much for purple? Yeah, so 6.36 is what we need for purple. We would need 9.89 for an elite. Now, none of these on the non-Habsburg version reach that number, but the number is basically high enough, especially from a standstill. So from the very first shot, we can actually land the 6.56. The 24 here, though, is actually pretty low because you kind of need into this 26-ish million to drop an Outcast LMG named. So that's the only downside of it, but then it has a pretty big upside. Let's actually go see it in action. And to take this on a run and kind of show it in action, we're going to keep it on that Chain Killer RLD version. Here I have 5 directives on. One of the things you can do, even for marksman rifles and such, because while we could be in cover, which I see a lot of people using and understanding nowadays, what you can also do is if you grab any special ammo, so for instance here around the corner from Overgrowth, there is actually that, and that's 30 rounds. That's going to be enough for us to clear out this, although I'll be in cover as well and generate even more ammo. We tried this before here, and yeah, as you can see, some loot about. That's due to a few too many patrols coming here, so I just gave up on it. Here, though, we'll start on the purple, although actually there's a patrol going out. But I'll start on the purple here. I have the modifier off as well here, just to not make it extra easy, because the modifier makes it, especially for sniping, even easier. And especially the thing is, we don't have to scope out between shots. That's the main advantage here. And then we give up a ton of damage for that. Well, not a ton. Not enough for it to be an issue, I feel. This will likely become my go-to for just this, doing activities, doing control points with a hotshot determined. Mostly because of this. Yeah, you don't scope out. I do feel as well, and I haven't done any testing on it. We might actually do a follow-up on that, or I'll leave it to others to do a side-by-side maybe. Where I think, because we don't have that scope out and scope in time, and especially the scope in time, that the reload actually is a little faster. Now here, though, we have that LMG dude. I'm going to shoot him. I'm going to leave him on, basically. It's close enough as a one-shot, but there, a White Death would have definitely killed him. This didn't, but of course, I left him within one shot, and it's an LMG guy, so he's going to die pretty easily. We'll go upstairs here and split this up into 2 fights as well, as especially one of the nice things of not calling it in right away, which I see a lot of people do, is that you have the time to go get set up and, for instance, clear out maybe a patrol that is coming in and then call it in. If you don't call it in either, if you split it into 2 fights like this, you also won't get rogues. Now, if you do want rogues, you can do it up to the last enemy, basically. The flare needs to have been fired while you're still in the assault phase, so one enemy still needed to be alive, basically. And my drone kind of giving away where they're coming from. Now, of course, if I had actually the modifier on by that point, we would have, especially with this and microwave coils, with the recon drone, the tactician drone, and the microwave coils, we would have been at full momentum, basically. That extra weapon damage would have been enough to kill that LMG dude. And what I especially feel at this one is follow-up shots feel at the very least faster. Now, of course, the thing is, though, that by scoping out in between shots, we would get awareness, basically, you know, because we get scoped out, we see that, oh, there's, you know, maybe an extra patrol coming or something. Now, the drone does that for me anyway. I'll just kind of keep an eye on the lines of the drone and see where they are going. And of course, here with Determined, yeah. And especially if they're kind of coming from a shallow angle like this makes it, I feel, much more comfortable to just get those follow-up shots in and just break it down. The thing is, though, that, yeah, it comes at the cost of some damage, especially when compared to White Death or even a custom M44. But it still has enough damage to start in purple. You need some grading on it, and then the rest of the build also needs to be optimized. And yeah, you do need the watch points, of course, and such. But you can get there pretty consistently. And if you can, and if you are someone like me that does use the scope, this feels so much nicer than any competition. And that's kind of the big strength of this Handbasket. It has enough firepower to do what we need it. And that's also very much down to it's an MMR. And that's not just to say that like it's better. It can work with hotshot. That's the big deal here. Because as one of the counterparts or counterpoints to this one would be, can we do similar things with an 1886? And the answer isn't really yes. Because for instance, if we kind of look at one of the setups that generally gets recommended for the 1886 headhunting is 3-piece breaking point, or you do 2 pieces and an eagle's grasp, and then 2-piece Zvia with a fox's prayer, getting basically all the bonuses into weapon damages and everything's rolled to headshot. It can't start on a purple. It doesn't reach that point because it doesn't have the gear set behind it like the MMRs do with hotshot. With breaking point, of course, yeah, if we were kind of in that moment of breaking point, we could trigger it with that. Or in if we were to go with versatile or such, you might be able to put an 1886 to the point where you could. Same as well with the modifier and such. But here, a grade 25 1886 with this kind of setup, which is considered, unless somebody wants to correct me on it, overall one of the harder hitting 1886 setups. With the Diamondback, it can, for instance, start on purple, but with the 1886 with Determined, and Determined, of course, is the thing that makes it super easy, it can't start there. Of course, if we were to go with different talents, then this becomes a little bit more of a moot point. But the Handbasket, as I was about to call it, breadbasket, as I've been doing so quite a lot, the Handbasket, being an MMR, allows it to be used with hotshot, with the bonuses that we have there. And yeah, that is its benefit, especially as well. We do need basically this scope on it, although, well, it would be kind of fine with any of the scopes. If we have, for instance, just the 12 times with the 35, that should be enough to reach the purple. Without the scope, we can't. So this is especially if you are using it scoped. If you are running Determined without scope, this wouldn't reach the point of a purple, so at that point it becomes, unless you're with the Habsburg, for instance, because with the Habsburg pieces it would. But the comfort of it should not be ignored, and that's a very important thing, and that's also what I've been kind of seeing both about the Turmoil and also about this Handbasket, is people either highlighting only its good sides, their good sides, or only their bad sides. No, these are, both of them are heavy trade-offs. In the case of the Handbasket here, we're trading a little bit of damage for some comfort. In the case of the Turmoil, we're trading single target damage. Although in a somewhat broken way, we're gaining even more damage sometimes on single target, but we're gaining spread damage. And even if that were to work as intended, that would still be a worthwhile trade. And yeah, that's kind of also our conclusion here, is that especially Turmoil in its current form with its double dipping is actually pretty powerful. Now, it isn't powerful for everywhere. We could definitely cherry pick places where it definitely doesn't work well, like incursion, as people keep bringing up. But there's other places that it does work. And especially with items like this, which are kind of need to just find their niche. And if they can find the niche, that's good enough. That means that they're useful enough. It doesn't need to always be best in slot or meta for it to matter. It's not just, the meta and then everything else is basically the worst thing ever. There's a line in between that. There's a spectrum. And that's kind of the issue that I've been having around, and that's also why I wanted to make this video, around the discussion both about the Turmoil and both about the Handbasket. And some people are just going, it's bad for this one thing, especially with, for instance, the Turmoil. So it's bad for everything. And some people are going, oh, it's super good for this one thing, so it's good for everything. No. And while the truth isn't always in the middle, because, you can just stretch that. This person on this side could just lie and, take the edge all the way out there-ish. And now the truth isn't in the middle anymore. In this case, it kind of is. You kind of have to see the downsides and you kind of have to see the upsides. Discussing either without the other is folly. It's just completely useless thing to do. That's also why I would just caution around, especially if you are watching content, pay attention to that. Once you kind of see it, I hope you can't unsee it, but that will also help you kind of understand what is trying to be conveyed, and then also from that, what you should take away from what that person is saying, including me, because I'm also not immune to this, as sometimes I enjoy something, so I feel everybody should enjoy it, but that doesn't need to be the case. Everything basically always has upsides and downsides, and we should acknowledge those. We should just discuss them as such. Give the good sides, give the bad sides, give the niches where it will work, because for instance, with Turmoil, it's gonna suck for the lovebirds. Yes, it's not gonna suck for control points, solo control points and such, as we get to even kill enemies that we don't see, especially as well with missions where it's much more controlled, and you kind of, especially if you're kind of a little bit, if you've been around for a while and then the mission's quite a binge, you know where they're gonna spawn and such, so you're not getting surprised by enemies. And then, we still always lose single target damage. What we gain for that, especially in its current form, is a little bit too much spread damage. But also in its current form, it should be acknowledged that, it is somewhat broken, and I hope they fix it, because even as a 50-50 split without the double dipping, I feel there is value to the Turmoil. Especially if you just can kill stuff without aiming at it. Together with that it staggers other enemies that might be shooting at you. It might even blow up an RC card that you couldn't even see that was coming your way, because it is every shot picking a different target. It will hit those kind of stuff together with, for instance, Black Tusk drones or such. Now, of course, the downside then still plays a role there. And then also moving the discussion as well to the Handbasket that I was about to call Breadbasket again. The Handbasket being an MMR gives it some benefits and also some downsides versus the 1886. Now, of course, it being an MMR, working with Hotshot, having those mod slots so we can have that scope on there. If you prefer the scope, that helps quite a bit. And of course, the scope as well. Adding 45 headshot, that is a pretty big bump up, allowing us, for instance, to start on purples as we do. The 1886, on the other hand, is of course being a rifle, is much more easy to snapshot with, as when you run around with it and then scope in, the difference between them is night and day, how quickly they become accurate. The 1886 is much faster. You can use it with rifles, for instance, allowing for things like the Headhunter tech tanks. Together with that as well, we have some of the talents, especially if you're not going determined, for instance, on rifles, you can go Rifleman, which is a very decent talent, especially if you are going for those headshots without the assistance of determined. On MMRs, the stand-in there would be either Ranger or maybe even going something like Pressure Point and maybe sending out a foam before you take the first shot or something. Or if you need the extra damage, you can, for instance, trigger it that way. So there is ups and downs to both of them, but especially I feel there is a place for this one as well. On just hotshot builds, I will actually trade in my custom M44 that I was kind of running on this hotshot build, although basically any of, as we mostly discuss quite often about MMRs, Any of the bolt action detachable mag ones, they were all in a pretty close range to each other, making them all pretty similar. And the handling basically got better the worse the base damage became. But it wasn't a big shift. Now the jump from, let's say, a custom M44 to this handbasket is a lot bigger than, for instance, to a tactical True 8. This is still even pretty far behind that. But not far enough behind that it's unusable, and I definitely will be using it. Its option of having that scope and not having to scope out between each shot definitely makes it feel snappier. I wouldn't mind actually doing some testing in the future of just side by side, seeing if we can, with scope in and such. I believe actually that likely the SVD here, because it doesn't have that time of scope in and then a shot, that yeah, you can likely get shots out faster this way. And it hits hard enough to be worthwhile, especially if you have the Habsburg version, then you don't even have the issue of an enemy and named LMG outcast. Even that is a one shot here. Now, of course, you do need some more grading on this, for instance, because while the SR1s and such, and the custom M44s and tactical True 8, even I believe, can start on a power pool without any grading, this does require a little bit of grading. Also, yeah, just to be clear on this, you do get it from the 7th day, basically, project. So you do need to do all of those projects. There's a short on my channel kind of explaining a really fast way of getting it. If you do want to get it and you haven't done those projects yet, you could do it in 20 minutes if you wanted to basically get them all done. It's basically 10 minutes setup and then a few minutes of farming once the setup is there. And then you can also, it seems that the project is repeatable, so you can get multiples from there. Then as well, once you have one, keep it as well, as it seems if you delete it, kind of like with the first sight, you need to have either one on the character or in the stash for the loot goblin to drop it. If there isn't one, that kind of makes that an issue. Although for the time being, you can get, if you did delete your other one because it was kind of useless, it didn't have detoc and determined, or detoc or determined, so you could make it the right way, basically. Keep it in the stash, just so you cannot get it to drop from the loot goblin, which is dropping this definitely. And yeah, I've gotten some from there and some from the daily projects by repeating the daily projects. So it does actually behoove you to get to that 7th day, so that 7th day kind of keeps repeating over and over again, so you can get multiple handbasket, and preferably getting one with a detoc, of course, and so it can be free talentable. But yeah, that brings us to the end of this video. I hope it was informative. If you did enjoy it, please do any and all of the algorithm things down below, as that does help out. So I'll do that a little bit of shilling here. For future videos, we're actually going to go into a video about the lexicon and terminology. And actually, I'll be doing a call to action in my community Discord as to even more terms. I'll put the terms I already have kind of planned for it, and we'll see if people want to add to there. So do definitely check that out and then add to it if once you see that, once you see me asking for it. And yeah, we'll also go into that refactor build showcase. So yeah, I hope you join me for those. And as always, have a good night.